Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new. My name is Chelsea. As you can tell, we're back with another slightly fitness related video, and this time I'm going to recap how I trained for and ran the Shape Women's Half Marathon. So I know when this video comes out, it'll probably be around a month or so after the marathon is completed. So this video is kind of long overdue, but I don't know why it just never occurred to me to actually recap this experience, especially when it has been part of my channel for quite a bit earlier in the year. So in this video, I want to cover my motivation for running the half, my background, the training plan, how was it, and finally what I felt like during and right after race day. And also, as this is my very first half marathon and official race that I've ever run in, I'm hoping that this information will help anybody out there who's also looking to get more into running. Side note, it's really not as intimidating as you think, and I think this video will quickly show you that. So without further ado, let's just get started. So the first thing I want to cover is my motivation and background. So I actually signed up for this around the end of January this year. I also made my sister sign up for it, so at least I'd have someone to run together, even if we weren't training together all the time. So in terms of my background, I have done some distance running before, but I wasn't a really big runner since like 2020 probably. I tried to challenge myself to train for a marathon length run back in 2020 when lockdown started, and that was basically the only way I could get my exercise in. It really wasn't planned out very well and wasn't even an official race, so I kind of just tapered off with running after that. Never actually run consistently here in New York where I am living now, so this was going to be a new experience for me. But overall, I would consider myself like a pretty active person. I used to go to the gym like at least 3 to 4 times a week back when I still had it in my old apartment, and I also danced for fun. So definitely not a stranger to cardio, but I was also super nervous because running in New York is a completely different beast than running in the suburbs, but we'll get into that shortly. So generally starting out, I think my stamina was pretty good, but I just was never exposed to any official training plans. Also, the only running gear I had were these running shoes from Saucony. I think I got them quite a while ago, but never really wore them, so they definitely were still new. And I had this jacket, which was pretty useful during the cold months since it had these zippered pockets. I knew I had to at least get some running gloves, but I didn't really see a need to invest in serious gear yet. And lastly, the app that I used to record my runs was Strava. Oh, and I almost forgot to say, the reason I signed up for this half marathon was just so I have something of a goal to run towards. And a half marathon felt like a pretty attainable goal where I feel like if I start training quite a while in advance, I could definitely build up to this, especially if speed wasn't a huge factor for me. But with that, let's just get into the training plan and let's see how well I did going up to that goal. So if you've been following my channel for a little bit, you might see that I have a big series of vlogs earlier this year just documenting my training. And this only covered, I believe, the first 6 or 7 weeks. I was pretty much sticking to the schedule almost every week. Sometimes I might switch around a few days, and sometimes I might take an extra rest day. But overall, I was super consistent. And I gotta mention the training plan. I used this one from Runner's World. It was a sub 145 half marathon over the course of I think 12 weeks. I know that seems very ambitious, like you want to run below 145, but I was more using it for the structure of the runs rather than the specific time goals they set. So this training had me running around 4 times a week with 2 rest days, one on Friday and one on Monday. And this kind of worked for me because I had a lot of time on the weekend mornings, so sometimes I would even look forward to these runs, and I feel like it really had me living a healthier lifestyle without going out too much on the weekends. I think the biggest challenge for me with training plans is sticking to the specific workout structures. So I was introduced to the fartlek and the interval training process for the very first time. I did see these terms before, so I knew roughly what they meant, but basically these are ways for you to run at different speeds within the same workout. Every time I would go running before, I would just stick to the steady pace I thought I could maintain the whole time. And for these workouts, you really have to be more vigilant. I feel like a fitness watch would have been super useful at this point instead of always like pulling up your phone to check the time as I was doing. But I was also documenting these for my vlog, so I wanted to, I guess, show the video that I am truly sticking to these workouts. And they are actually very important in helping you run faster and be stronger on the day of the race. Once we got to the second half of the training program, I kind of fell off. So around the 6-week mark, I took a week off to go on vacation. So me and my friends went to the Disney parks and Universal down in Florida. And although there was a lot of cardio involved on that trip, like we were on our feet all day, it definitely wasn't running. So that kind of set me back. Then when I got home from the trip, I got sick. So it wasn't COVID, it wasn't like a fever. It was just kind of this cold that was super persistent for like the next few weeks. And I missed out on another week of training. Then I got super busy with preparing for my move since I was moving around the end of April. And that was another poor bit of timing on my end since I had signed up for this half marathon that was right around the time of my move from one apartment to the other, pretty much across the city of New York. So not to say I didn't run at all, I still ran here and there, but just wasn't as strict about following these structures. And that brings us to the race day, which is going to be the next section. So take it away. So if you've watched my previous video, which was a vlog, you know that my friends actually came to visit New York that very same race day weekend. And unfortunately, that weekend was also super rainy. The only silver lining was that it didn't rain during our race, which I'm very thankful for because that would just have been the worst first marathon experience ever. But the night before, my sister was supposed to arrive to New York and we were going to stay at my place and then head to the race together the next morning. However, her train was delayed and she got here super late, around 12 a.m. So after we picked her up and went all the way back to my place, it was already around 1 a.m. and we had to be up by 6 a.m. the next morning so we could get there by 8 a.m. This was definitely not ideal. I think the second we both woke up for the race, we were like, can't wait to get back home and take a nap because you know we're really gonna need it. This race was gonna be a little more than 2 loops around Central Park to make that 13.1 miles. And when we got there, there were already like so many people gathering around. We just used the restroom, ate a couple of snacks, and stretched a little bit. So my sister and I decided to start in Group G, which was for a 2-hour time or around a 9-minute pace, and thought that was pretty realistic for us. Once we started out, I was super optimistic. I feel like just being around the spirit of everyone running and going towards a single goal was super motivating. It wasn't like running through the streets of New York by myself anymore. I was already mentally preparing myself for around the 9 or 10 mile mark, since that was usually when I hit a wall and just felt super bad for the last couple of miles. But I think with just all the energy and people cheering, I didn't feel that as much. Running with my sister also helped since she actually used to do cross country and track and field competitively in high school and college. So I felt like she knew what she was doing and all I had to do was just follow her. The course was a little bit hilly, so there were some elevations around some parts, but once you expect those parts and just prepare yourself mentally for it, I think they are pretty easy to get over. There's nothing like super steep. Of course, the ground was wet, so that was another factor I had to look out for. I did run in snowy, icy conditions before, so that I wasn't super scared about. And towards the end, we did sprint a little bit because I saw the clock that was 10 minutes to 2 hours. And I told my sister, do you think we'll make it in time? And she said, we should have sped up earlier, but we did sprint a little bit and just made it under 2 hours, as you can see from the stats here. And afterwards, I don't know, it was still a really exciting environment. We stopped by to take some photos, which I know you have to pay for these photos, so we couldn't actually access the full quality of them. And they were also handing out some apples and bagels, so we grabbed some of those. We met up with my friends who were visiting New York, but really, me and my sister were just so exhausted from the lack of sleep that we didn't stick around very much and just left immediately to take a nap. So now that I've summed up how the race went, let's move on to a couple of closing thoughts and a little bit of advice from me to you. So that was my first official half marathon. So here are a couple things I learned throughout this process. The first thing is that running with others is always going to be encouraging. Definitely having my sister be there alongside me, even though she had to travel to New York quite late at night that day. That was a very good idea since we definitely encouraged each other and I felt motivated to keep up with her, especially during those hilly parts. The second thing is pretty obvious. do not make the same mistake as me and actually get a lot of good sleep before a long run. So way back in the video when I mentioned sometimes I was actually excited for the weekends where I could really focus on my long run, that was due to me actually getting a good night's sleep on those weekends. So I did not go out as much during that time. I tried to sleep early and wake up early. I think one time I actually finished my 10 or 11 mile run all before 9 a.m. on a Sunday. That was one of the best feelings ever because in New York, if you catch the sunrise or the streets that are not so busy at just the right time, it is really one of the best experiences ever. Nothing feels better than finishing something that you set out to do and prepared for, aka got a good night's sleep for. And the third thing I have to recommend is that you do not need a lot of expensive running gear. To me, this is one of the most simple sports that you can pick up. So I did see a lot of TikToks or videos influencing you to buy certain thermal wear or maybe like those little water bottles, liquid IV, or any of that. And while I think those things can be super helpful, I think just starting out, you don't need to invest in all of that. For me, the only thing I bought that was extra in this journey was a pair of running shorts that actually had these little zippered pockets for when it got a little bit warmer, and the running gloves. So those two were things that I thought were essential because of weather conditions here in New York. So definitely plan accordingly to where you are. But other than that, I would say play it by ear and think about what do you really need before jumping into any of the trendy items or things that more pro athletes use. And of course, gotta mention that you should not try anything different for the day of the race. I think I brought up to my sister like a week before, should we try doing those gels that I see people use? But she said if you're gonna do them, you better start trying them right now, since it's not a good idea to try anything different on the day of a race. And lastly, I think I really gained an appreciation for fartleks and interval trainings. I never thought of myself as a sprinter. I think out of all the sports I've done, a lot of them are stamina based, since I just don't think I had that explosive power. But I do think that practicing that is at least good for me to experience another side of the sport and hopefully get myself to be faster in the long term. So that about sums up my half marathon experience. It was definitely not the most perfect or ideal situation, but I'm super proud that me and my sister were at least able to complete it. And I did barely come under the 2-hour mark, so for me, that is an achievement. Will I be doing more of these in the future? I think so, but for now, I think I'm gonna take a break from running and figure out what my next fitness venture is gonna be. One thing about me is I gotta mix up my methods of exercising so that I don't get super burnt out on one thing. But of course, running is one of the cheapest activities, sports or otherwise, that you can do in New York City. All I had to do was put on my shoes and some music and just go out. So it is a little bit of a struggle finding something just as affordable, but I'll keep you guys updated on what happens next in my fitness era. And with that, let me know if any of this was helpful to you, what your half marathon experience was like, any tips for me or anyone else in terms of running, and just anything you like. What are your thoughts? So thanks so much for watching if you've come this far, and I will see you guys very soon in the next one. Goodbye.